Hey everyone, thank you for joining. We will be getting started here in just a minute. Seeing a bunch more folks roll on. Thanks for jumping on. We will get started here a minute after 2. Or I guess earlier if you're on the West Coast. All right, we can get started. I don't know if you can all hear the dog Jack in the background barking. He's also very excited to be here. So I'll introduce Jack first. So you can hear him in the background. And then I just want to say my name is Erin Simmons. I am a marketer here at Seer Interactive, and I will be behind the Q&A today and the comment and question box. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, feel free, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our stars today, besides Jack. Rand Fishkin, co-founder and CEO of SparkToro, a software company focused on market research, and what we're here for today, audience intelligence. So Rand has dedicated his professional life, as I'm sure many of you know, and many of you are here for, to helping people do better marketing through blogging, videos, speaking, webinars like this, and his book, Lost and Founder. And then we also have Teresa Lopez. Teresa is our audience and content lead at Seer Interactive. So Teresa focuses really on the users behind the search to help develop content that best helps them solve their problems. So one little fun fact, Rand was a speaker at our 2019 Seer Fest conference in Philly. He helped us raise $34,000 for HopeWorks Camden, which is a great organization y'all should go check out. They're out of Camden, New Jersey. They help connect youth to life-changing opportunities where they're growing technology skills and going to work for enterprise businesses within the community of Camden and Philadelphia. Teresa was just gracious enough to confirm her speaker spot at this year's Seer Fest, which will stream worldwide on October 22nd. So thank you, Teresa. Early bird tickets will go on sale on 9/1, so you can check that out on our website for $75. 100% of that $75 will go to Coded by Kids, is our charity partner this year. So they're an organization out of Philadelphia focusing on providing young people 8 to 18 from underrepresented groups with software development, digital design, computer science, and tech startup foundations. So I will stop my plug there for Seer Fest. We are here to talk with Rand and Teresa about audience. So Rand, I will let you take it away.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Erin. Teresa, great to be here with you. I'm excited that we get to do this together. This is super fun. For folks, by the way, for folks who are joining and who may not know this, Teresa is actually featured in one of the chapters in Lost and Founder, because when Will and I, Will Reynolds, the founder of Seer, when we did our CEO swap many years ago, Teresa was the first person that I was assigned to work with at Seer to help understand how their agency works and all those things. And yeah, and we've been lucky enough to maintain a friendship ever since. So that's really wonderful. Let's see. So we have a lot to get to. I am going to share my PowerPoint. Share. And how about we make it full screen? Everyone see that okay? It looks great. I see you all nodding. I'm just kidding. I can't see you. Your videos are hidden to me. But I can see Teresa nodding, so good enough. There we go. So I want to help you upgrade your marketing by better understanding your audience. And the teaser for this entire presentation is that by understanding your audience even a little bit better, you can dramatically change the outcomes of your marketing. And I think that, look, any of us who do marketing understand this in principle. I want to try and put some practices, some strategies and tactics into your toolbox. And I'll start with the strategies. We'll go to the tactics, and then Teresa is going to take the overview that I give you and show some some actionable examples of work that they've done at Seer and that she's done putting this stuff into practice. So I think there's some really cool stuff here. Before we do that, though, I'm going to make you very hungry. So I am obsessed with Italian cooking. I married an Italian woman, Geraldine, right? And her family all speaks Italian, and they the ones who are in the United States, they're okay cooks, but the ones who are in Italy, oh my God, amazing, right? So whenever, well, someday when we're able to travel again, when, I don't know, did you hear about the private jet filled with like American venture capitalists that landed in Italy and then they kicked them all out like immediately? It was just, oh my God. So I really like to make risotto. And risotto is an Italian rice dish. It's basically this, you use stock and you stir it over a long period of time and pour in a bunch of cheese afterwards. And you can see there, I made some risotto. I became obsessed with it many, many years ago. But during lockdown, I could not get the core secret ingredient, which is you need a lot of bones. And at least here in Seattle, for the first 3 months of COVID that we had, like February, March, April, Seattle was like the first place hit in the US, as most of you know. You could not get beef bones at the grocery store effectively. They were always out. And so I could not make risotto. And if I have to stay in and I can't travel, you better believe I want to make one of my favorite dishes. So instead, I shopped around and I tried to find a commercial bone broth or stock that could substitute, and eventually stumbled on Kettle and Fire. I think I found them on Twitter, and then they ended up signing up as a SparkToro customer, which was kind of cool too. But so basically, it's not featured here. The classic beef bone broth from them is a reasonable substitute because it has a high enough collagen level. And you need a lot of collagen in the stock that you're using to make the risotto, because that is what gives it that sort of super creamy texture, so that when the individual grains, which are supposed to have a little bit of bite and there's sort of that like saltiness and flavor in there, but they have to have like that exterior sticky texture to feel right. And it just makes the risotto perfect. So, okay. When you go to Kettle and Fire's website, after I purchased a bunch of them, I got this survey that they run, right? It's a smart survey. They're trying to understand the people who buy their products. So they ask, how did you hear about us? And if you click whatever, health influencer H or something, they'll say, oh, well, which one, right? Which blog or publication did you hear about us from? Or which health influencer sent you? And then you fill out this information. And this is useful to them, right? They get some attribution from it. The data is obviously very imperfect and imprecise, and it suffers from all the biases that consumer surveys suffer from. But it is the kind of audience intelligence data that can be then very well applied by the marketing campaign. So if they see that a lot of people have started hearing about them on podcasts after they've done podcasts, or they have that memory, they can potentially double down on those, or they might go research looking into sponsoring podcasts or whatever it is, right? There are also these types of reports. So this is specifically a global bone broth market industry analysis report for $3,000 that contains information like this. This is literally what passes for market research. I don't mean to berate or demean anyone who does market research work, but I am very concerned that the classic market research that we've thought about in marketing for a long time, and that a lot of folks use, is incredibly overpriced for what you're getting. Obviously, this is one of the cheaper ones. I don't know if you've looked out there, but there's market research reports that run into the hundreds of pages and cost tens of thousands of dollars, literally. And is it helpful to know that 3 in 4 consumers are more attracted to products that contain only natural ingredients? I don't know, this is a stretch to me, right? Really, really a stretch. It's feels a little manipulative, to be honest, and not giving you data about your customers and your audience. That's not to say you can't get any useful insights from some of these. I'm sure some contain them. I was not impressed with this one. And by the way, you can get a bunch of them by just searching for the name plus file type :PDF in Google, because people have uploaded them, right? So I don't know. Okay. So let's talk about this customer journey and the extraction of audience intelligence. And I'll try and show you some of the things that I like a little bit better than broad market research reports and self-reported surveys. So there's kind of discovery phase, right, where you're targeting people who are learning about the topic. This is a cooking class we took in Italy where the chef there showed us how to make risotto. And then awareness, right? People who are familiar with the space and they're learning and they're consuming content about what you offer, me consuming bone content. Hopefully there's not a bunch of vegetarians on the webinar today. I'm really sorry. But problem experiencing, right? People who are facing the problem, right? So I'm facing the problem of I can't get bones, therefore I'm gonna buy some commercial bone broth. And then solution seeking. Like I'm actively focused on finding the product or service to fix my problem. There's my kettle and fire bone broth. I used them in a SparkToro demo video. So when I think about like ways that you can do marketing, there's sort of these two methodologies, right? There's boulder pushing marketing, which I think a bunch of us are familiar with, right? Where, you just throw a bunch of money at Google and Facebook, you buy ads, and every step of progress, right? Every click requires the same amount of spend or more. There's no real gain in efficiency over time. And as your competitors come into the space or they get higher return on investment, they're going to spend more on those advertising platforms. And so your step to success gets even more difficult. And this is why it's so much more effective to build a marketing flywheel. For those of you who haven't heard me talk about this before or read about it, this is my core philosophy about what gives your marketing a competitive advantage, right? The idea is when you do a marketing thing, even if it's buy a Google ad or publish a blog post or guest on a webinar, like I'm doing here with Seer and Teresa and Aaron, or sending a tweet or whatever it is, right? You boost that thing's reach, you engage and grow the audience from that boost and that consumption. You improve some algorithmic signals, right? There's almost every platform out there, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn or Reddit or Facebook or Google or YouTube. There's algorithmic signals. Even email marketing has algorithmic signals, right? To determine whether you get thrown into the promotions tab, or if you have high open rates, you might, appear in the main tab. And then hopefully you're getting higher ROI next time. And so this cycle, if you do it well, is a virtuous cycle that continues to produce increasing returns from the same effort, which is the absolute opposite, right, of the boulder pushing, right? This is no gain in efficiency. Things get harder over time, and this is things get easier and better over time, right? You're getting more out of each cycle. So, at Moz, I used a content and SEO flywheel. Probably very, very familiar to most folks on the webinar. Kettle and Fire has a different kind of flywheel, right? They do more of this social focused, influencer focused, and then using retargeting and remarketing behavioral ads to follow you around the web like a lost puppy dog once you've visited their bone broth website. So if you can get a deep understanding of your audience and customers, you can improve this process and all of the processes around marketing, right? From discovery all the way through to conversion, awareness, all of that stuff, right? You will know which marketing things might trigger better responses from your potential customers. You can figure out what resonates with your audience as you're attempting to engage and grow them. You can figure out how to get higher ROI next time, right? What's going to improve future performance? What's holding me back? Why did people people who almost bought, or people who look like right customers. Why did they not convert? Why did some of them convert? All of that audience understanding is crucial to getting this cycle working better. And I have this mental model I like to use for this process of an audience falling into kind of four groups, right? I have current customers, people who have already bought my product, my service, right? People who bought the bone broth. Potential customers, right? They might be interested in health. They might be interested in cooking. They might be interested in recipes, right? They're right customer fits who I want to influence because I suspect that if I reach them, they'll become customers. There's people who are not customers that I want to influence, that are in my audience, right? People who can potentially amplify what I'm doing. Journalists in media, writers and bloggers, podcasters, video creators, social influencers, event organizers, and sources of influence that are not even in my field that might reach some of those people. And then there's sort of broad community, right? People who consume recipe content, community members who they're never going to broadcast or amplify something, but they might be influential because they make private references, right? So this is kind of the audience as I think about it for literally any product, any company, any organization, nonprofit, education, doesn't matter. If you ignore these people, the potential amplifiers, and you focus all your efforts into your current and potential customers, you generally are going to lose out to folks who think more broadly about the community and the amplifiers, because they are considering how the potential amplifiers are influencing the potential customers and current customers and how that changes. I felt this really painfully in the years after I stepped down as CEO from Moz, and Moz sort of took its focus. For those of you who don't know, I started a company called Moz, which is in the SEO software field. And when we took our eye off the SEO ball, I did not realize, even though we were still gaining customers, even though we still had a big audience of potential customers, we were losing potential amplifiers to competitors because I was not paying attention to that world. We weren't paying attention to that world. So I like to formulate this visually, right? And just kind of think about this as in this Venn diagram sort of format, right? So my current customers are inside the group of potential customers. And then there's some overlap with potential amplifiers and broader community. And generally speaking, the best marketing I can possibly do is one that appeals to these two groups, right? The potential customers, people who might buy my product, and potential amplifiers, people who might broadcast it out there to more people so that I can grow my audience. If I only concentrate on potential customers, I tend to create content and advertising and messaging that is very conversion focused and that is not going to earn me more attention and amplification. And that sucks in an algorithmic era, right? We are living in an algorithmic era where the content and messages that we see are the ones that earn the most engagement. And like it or hate it, that is how the news media works. That's how social media works. That's how blogging works. That's how webinars work, and video and YouTube and Google too. If you know your audience, right? If I understand these groups and what they want and how they work, I can know things like, at the very tactical level, which tactics to try, which channels to experiment with, what's the marketing thing that I should start with. I get insights into what earns audiences attention and what doesn't, right? I can, if I get this audience intelligence, I can get behavioral data, I can get that information so that I know how to engage and grow my audience, and I can figure out how to improve the process in the future. So this is the core of why I'm so passionate about this stuff. And let's dive in. So I've been using this phrase audience intelligence. What do I mean by that? I mean, for me, the definition is useful, usable data about your customers, your potential customers, and your community. And generally falls into these three buckets, right? Demographic stuff, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Psychographics, right? That's like lifestyle and values and interests. Like, I'm very interested in cooking. I'm very interested in recipes. I'm not as interested in health. Maybe I should be, but I'm sure I'll get there when I'm older. Behavioral data, right? Product usage, social media use, what people search for, right? Keywords, where they go on the web. And there are ways to collect this data that almost all of them fall into these 4 buckets, right? Surveys, interviews, analytics, and then behavioral data, right? So surveys, I don't hate surveys. They can be useful. I was showing the one from Kettle and Fire. I think there's medium usefulness, right? But it's sort of like expressed preferences, message testing, right? Self-reported traits. Interviews, I like a lot. I think they should always be combined with surveys, right? Because you can get at underlying values and market perceptions. And then your analytics data, right? So traffic sources, what's sending you traffic, which content is performing, areas of funnel friction. Most of you who are in web marketing are probably really familiar with that stuff. And then behavioral data, right? So the percent of my audience who fit particular profiles, have particular attributes. They describe themselves in a way, they have a certain job title, they follow certain sources, they use particular words and phrases. And you don't have to get all of this data all the time. That is not what I'm not trying to overwhelm you or suggest that like you have to do this. But when you have questions like these in your organization, right, on your marketing team, like how do we earn more evangelism from current customers? Or what's potential customers' current perception of us versus our competition? What could nudge their behavior? Or you have questions about which publications and people have influence on our community, or which connections, if you're doing more direct sales, could help us earn some of that amplification. How do we stand out? That is why that is where you apply these audience intelligence tactics, right? You find the questions that you need to answer and you put them in. So some core components. I do really recommend having real relationships with people in your audience. Not just because of the relationship quality, just because that connection is a powerful way to gain a deeper insight and understanding of potentially, data that you see. You can go and have real person conversations. I find that incredibly valuable. By the way, fun fact about this photo: there's one person pictured here. There are 70,000-ish people, I think, in the Eagles Stadium. Only one person, at least that I saw that day, was not wearing Eagles gear. Yes, it was me. I look like I'm the only hipster going to brunch. Everybody else is at an Eagles game. Very annoying that Will and Ross did not tell me that everybody wears Eagles gear when you go to the stadium. I did not get my audience intelligence, and so I look like an idiot. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of people when I was walking through the stadium who are like, what the hell is that guy wearing? Who is that? Thankfully, they were playing the New York Jets that day. And as everyone knows, the New York Jets don't actually have any fans. So it was, actually, that's not true. Who is it? It's that marketing guy, the Hustle, Gary V, right? He wants to like buy the New York Jets. That's his dream. Okay. All right. Whatever. Blah, 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 blah. So don't be Rand. Have conversations with your audience so you know how to behave around them. I also recommend getting statistically significant data. I really like having this ability to say, oh, of our audience, these are their interests, these are their attributes, these are their behaviors in percentile quantities, so that when someone says, oh, well, we should try to do X, you can go look at the data, the numbers. You, of course, need a well-structured, measurable funnel. Most of you are familiar with that, so I won't dive into it. And market-wide behavioral data sources. If you are not familiar with SimilarWeb, I'm going to talk about them, a tactic with them in a sec, but I really like the clickstream data that they collect. Most of you might be familiar with some of my work with JumpShot. They went out of business. They were sort of driven out of business by media campaign who some conspiracy theorists think Google might have been behind. I don't know what they're talking about, but two other sources, if you haven't checked them out, Verto Analytics and BI Science. Both of those do it. So does another company called Disco. I just talked to them last week, DISQO. They have sort of a panel approach, kind of like Nielsen for that stuff. And data about what they pay attention to, which SparkToro does a decent job of, right? So showing that of people who pay attention to Kettle and Fire, a high percentage of them follow these other accounts, engage with these other websites and podcasts and YouTube channels. So let's get into the applications. I think that's a good thing here in our last 5 minutes. On the strategy side, we can take audience intelligence and think about how we do our positioning, right? What is our unique value proposition against our competitors? Who's our customer target? We can think about promotion, what the story that we're telling is, where we're amplifying it, how we're earning a path to return on that story. We can think about our funnel, right? Acquisition, conversion, retention, and we can think about our approach, channels, team, hacks, flywheels, all that. And this it's not just at the strategy level. Audience intelligence is also super useful at the tactical level. Teresa will actually talk you through a bunch of those examples, but that includes advertising, right? The messages that you're promoting and the copy and where you're allocating budget. It includes content and SEO. It includes user experience. It includes conversion rate optimization. In fact, conversion rate optimization is probably the place that most of us are most familiar with audience intelligence, because that's where we try and figure out what was the problem that stopped someone from converting, and how do I change that call to action or messages or nurturing or the funnel structure to do that. So what's the point of having this conversation right now? Like, why is this so important? And I think a big part of that is because behavior is changing at a large scale in a way that we have not seen, at least in my professional lifetime. Like in the 20 years that I've been working, I have never seen so much economic behavior globally and nationally in the US change so dramatically. And obviously a ton of that is driven by the pandemic's first order effects and second order effects, right? We're all locked in. We're nervous about going outside. We're nervous about what kind of businesses we can participate in. E-commerce is way up. In-person visits are way down. There's, GDP is dramatically changed. Work hours have dramatically changed, everything. And this behavior keeps shifting and changing. If you haven't checked it out, by the way, I love what HubSpot has done, where they've open sourced and aggregated their data. You can click the link and check it out. But essentially, they show you of all the websites on HubSpot that are using their platform, what's their traffic like? Has it gone up or down? What are the deals created and closed deals? And we've seen, so this is because a lot of HubSpot's customers are B2B. SparkToro's own conversion rates and sort of customer data has looked pretty similar to this. Like March and April were very rough. May was not great. There was some recovery in June. It dipped in early July again. It seemed to be coming back at the end of July. It seemed to dip in early August. It seems to be coming back again at the end of August. It's wild to watch this graph and then watch our own ProfitWell account and be like, oh, wow, yeah, this is matching up really nicely. So obviously our product strategies and marketing strategies have to keep up with these changes in behavior, right? We can launch new things. We can think about our pricing. I know at SparkToro, like Casey and I have been thinking very much about pricing and whether we need a low-cost package. We've been thinking about positioning. How do we highlight our solution, our product as a solution to a new kind of problem that's relevant? And tactics, like do we change where we're doing our marketing or what we're trying to accomplish, or channel balance? For example, for us, like podcasts have been huge for me for marketing and earning attention. But in the pandemic era, I think podcast listenership is down about 35% because people aren't commuting. And so there's like this challenge of, okay, well, how much effort do we put into that? And you probably want to exhaust these activities and opportunities before you kill your budget or your team. Well, sorry, cut your team. Don't kill your team. That's bad. Okay. Some tactical audience intelligence tips for right now. So first off, I mentioned that podcast listenership is down, but the number of podcasts is rising dramatically. I think everybody in lockdown is sort of like, well, maybe I should start a podcast. And so there are tons of them appearing. As they reach these niche audiences, they're very, very inexpensive to get on, and they're very, relatively speaking, much easier to pitch for a guest spot on a podcast than almost any other kind of outreach pitch request you can make. Potential opportunity there. Number two, if you go to your analytics, I highly recommend this. Go to your analytics, find websites that have sent you high quality traffic in the past. You should look over a long period of time because you want to see like an old blog post from 2 years ago, 3 years ago that sent you high quality traffic. And it's not just go back to them and try and get another whatever piece of coverage. It is go figure out what else people who visit that website also visit, right? So I can go see inside SparkToro, people who frequently visit buffer.com also visit these other sites. These are probably great places for us. You can do this in SimilarWeb as well, both free, by the way. So check out, you have to scroll to the very bottom when you plug in a site to SimilarWeb, but competitors and similar sites will show you really good information there. Number three, right now, especially because budgets, especially in consumer especially, are down, and many B2B, free value in exchange for emails works really well. A lot. So this is right, a personal budgeting tool similar to like what Mint was. And in the capture email world, I am a big believer in offering that free value and then basically creating pent up future demand when budgets are tight, like right now, or for products that aren't yet available, and then executing on that pent up future demand when it returns. And my expectation is sometime the next 6 to 9 months, we will see a return of that activity. You can already see a return of some of it and execute on it then. So email capture, super valuable right now. Number 4, it is an awesome time to test pulling back on your branded search. I've talked to a few PPC agencies and a bunch of brands, like when I demo SparkToro and ask them, where they're earning their visitors and traffic and that kind of thing. And branded search, it feels like a lot of people have pulled back on their competitive spend here. And so it might be a decent time to also test pulling back on your branded search and repurposing those dollars either into different ads or different channels and tactics. I also do recommend that because as you gain intelligence about your audience, you can see where and how they participate in different places. And this is a really good reason to spend more energy on distribution versus just raw creation of content. I worry that as marketers, I do this myself. I'll pour hours and days into blog posts. I'll send out one tweet and put it on LinkedIn, and I'll just expect everyone comes to me. And that is dumb. That is dumb, right? Like, I know that my audiences are across all these different platforms and channels. I have intelligence about where to reach them. What I should be doing is talking about the content that I've created and amplifying it in different places, multiple times, in different ways to earn that attention back. Ross Simmons has a great post that you can check out on building a content distribution engine and how to reshare, repost, and remix. And with that, I am going to turn things over, not to Q&A, but rather to Teresa. Let me stop my share and you should be able to take over.
Thanks, Rand.
Oh, and I see some folks asking about whether the PowerPoints will be available. And the answer is, heck yeah.
Yeah, we'll send those out in the thank you email that you'll all get after this. And while Teresa is getting all set up, Rand, we did have one comment come through. It was more of a comment than a question. A guy named Gary V. He said he didn't appreciate your comment on the Jets and that you should know your audience better before you make comments like that. So I think he said you'll be hearing from him, but just expect that email.
I'm so excited to get an email from Gary Vaynerchuk complaining about Jets fans in the Philadelphia Eagles stadium. So that's the only thing that saved me.
All right, Teresa. All right, Teresa, we'll throw it over to you.
All right, well, Rand, I'll do the obligatory, can you see my screen? Because now you are my only lifeline. All right, thank you very much. So as Rand alluded to, I'll continue talking about some tactics to understanding your audience more, and particularly how to speak to them. So has anyone ever gone on a date or met someone at a bar and the person just talked about themselves? And you find yourself saying things like, oh, okay, yeah, you went to Wharton, or oh, okay, yeah, you have a Tesla. Like, they are not asking about you whatsoever. They are talking about what they're interested in, what they like, and nothing about you. It feels like this, right? It feels super aggressive and really off-putting and kind of uncomfortable. This applies to companies as well. You don't want to be the brand that only talks about yourself and what you care about and what you're proud of. We have to understand and appeal to the people behind the screens, our customers. But sometimes as marketers, we don't always get it right. We're guilty of pushing our own agendas. So here's a page for a project management software that boasts it's the first truly intelligent project management. I don't know what the proof is in that claim. I was taking a look at the page. I think it must be this robot telling people what to do in the image, I think, is supposed to demonstrate that intelligence. But as we go further down the page, we see that it talks about things like get everything done and lists a bunch of tools within the software like task lists, subtasks, Gantt charts, features that their product team probably wanted to call out. Okay, well and good. But then as we scroll further, there are even more features that it talks about. Files, file edit, task board, templates. It looks like everyone in marketing thought about which features were most important. So they said, you know what, we're just gonna put them all up here and leave them here. But what's missing from the page? It's not telling me what this tool is gonna do for me, the benefits it's gonna provide, or what's gonna change in my world once I use the tool. It only talks about the features that they have that they think is important. It feels like this, right? We don't want to hear just about a company's features. We want to understand how they will help us. So we don't want to be a bad date to our customers. And that's what I'll go over today is how do we understand them so we can speak more to what they need and what they care about. If you're thinking, oh, we're not that bad, let's talk about what this looks like in search. So I'm getting married next year and we've been researching wedding insurance. I was supposed to get married this year, but the pandemic had other plans. So we're moving to next year. A lot of different people are in our shoes. And if 2020 can teach me anything, it's to expect the unexpected. Things that I could never imagine are going to go wrong. So my need for wedding insurance is different now. It's no longer a check the box thing for my venue requirement. I want to make sure we're being financially secure and we're prepared for anything that can happen. So let's take a look at search results. Here are the paid results for this query. So if you just take a look at the listings, you'll see things like prices and the speed of the quote. It also mentions venue requirements, which is definitely true. But there's some mentions of unexpected. Okay. There's also a car insurance ad, which isn't great. So we got to get better at that, marketers. This is page one. And you'll notice it's not speaking to me about safety and security and things like that I'm caring about. So taking a look at organic results, I can see messaging around protecting yourself against financial loss, venue requirements as well, but it also starts to talk about coverage for a variety of mishaps like illnesses or vendors closing, which are things that I'm actually worried about. And this messaging is connecting with me more. This is better. And it also illustrates that organic results tend to be better aligned with users than paid, since we really have to earn our positions. I'm also an SEO, so I'm definitely not unbiased in this. But if we sort of take a step back and think about what could it really look like to understand how your audience is feeling and what does that messaging look like? So this was actual messaging for wedding insurance at the end of last year that I saw that really speaks to me now. So it says, while we can't guarantee everything will go right, we will be there if something goes wrong. Wow. Doesn't that make you feel safe and secure? It's a breath of fresh air as compared to save this money, get a quick quote fast. It's so different. This ad really connects with me and how I'm feeling and what I need. That's why understanding your audience is so important. You want to be able to connect with them like that ad connects with me. We need to understand the problems your audience is trying to solve, what matters to them in order to build strong relationships. So today I'll talk about 3 case studies and 3 research methods to understanding your audience in order to better know how to speak to them. We'll cover online community research, on-site polls, as well as unmoderated user studies. These are research methods that are really simple and can provide insights in a few hours of work, which you can then test. And then after that, if performance is really good, you can start to roll out larger changes, similar to what Rand was talking about in his flywheel concept. Not all research projects have to take 4 months and a really large budget. I know that's certainly a barrier to entry for our clients. I did want to note that there are certainly places for research that's statistically significant and deep and takes months. There's certainly a place for that. What we'll be talking about here are opportunities to gain insights to drive tests on things like messaging to better connect with users. And there are simple things that I'll talk about that you can start doing this week to better understand your customers. So for the first case study, we work with a client in the education space that offers a Master's of Library Science degree, and we were doing some research for them. And one phrase continued to stick out through our research in search queries, as well as forums: become a librarian. What we found is that these students who are looking for MLIS degrees were doing so in the context of their career aspirations and what their motivations were to become a librarian. That's why they were searching, that's what they were driving towards. So our ad copy, though, only focused on the program. So you can see here in the control, we just had the program name in the headline. So we did a very simple ad copy test. The only thing that we did was switch out the program name for become a librarian. And with that test, we saw both the click-through rate and conversion rate double. It was an extremely simple test, as you could see, but it had such a strong payoff in conversions because we understood really what motivated these people and connected with them. That is the power of research. One way to find information about your audience's motivations is via online forum research. We use Reddit most often at Seer. It's an online community that has separate sub-forums into very specific niches like library science. You can take a look at that screenshot. A few tips if you want to get started: search for your brand name or competitor brand names to see what people are saying about you. I'll warn you about Reddit. People can be very unfiltered, and sometimes you'll see things that you don't want to hear. But it's really important to know that, right? If people are talking about you behind your back, you want to know what they're saying. You can also search for the URL of your site or competitor websites to see where are people referring to your website without using your name. And you can also look for words like the following to understand opinions. Because can indicate reasons why someone chose a brand. Why can identify a thread asking members of the community why they chose the brand they did. Or where or who could identify a thread where someone is asking for recommendations that others in the community use. And it could also understand what people's use cases are to better understand what those needs are. For the second case study, we had a client in the home inspection certification space, and they had always thought that their customers were former contractors who knew this industry, and it was just another step in the career path. But we did research and we found that some customers weren't coming from a contractor background. They were doctors or they were teachers, and they didn't have any previous experience in the industry. What they were really caring about was the freedom that that work provided. Our content of our client was so full of jargon, a normal person wouldn't be able to understand what it was saying. So we did a very simple test. We took a meta description, took the jargon out, and made it to be more straightforward to people that are unfamiliar with the industry. And we saw a 57% increase in click-through rate. Again, it's a very simple test, but it showed results. One way to get this information is to use website polls to ask site visitors questions about their visit, background, a lot of different things. You can see an example here on Masterclass. A few things to keep in mind if you would like to do this is consider the page intent when building out the poll. If you want to understand first impressions, maybe you want to add it to the homepage. If you want to understand someone who's further down in the funnel, maybe you want to add that to a pricing page. Your questions will really depend on your research objective, but a couple you might want to consider are why are you primarily interested in the product or service? Which of the following best describes your background? Or what is confusing about this page? Those last two questions could get us the insights that we had learned from the case study with the jargon and with the different backgrounds. And then within Seer, Hotjar is the tool we use most often to run on-site polls. And it's more than just that, it also offers heat mapping as well as website recording and a lot of other things. So finally, for our last case study, we have a client in the advice space that offers online chats. And the landing page had focused on the trustworthiness of the brand, the convenience of the service, and reviews from existing customers. And all of that sounded like it made sense. However, as we dug more into research, we found that a trend among chat users was that they really valued the transcripts that they could refer to later, so they didn't have to take notes during their session and be a little bit scattered. They could really just hone in and listen without having to worry about all of that note-taking. So we worked with the client to update the main banner of the landing page to highlight that users received transcripts afterwards and the benefits that we knew chat users cared about. And that resulted in an over 9% conversion rate increase. And that amounts to an almost $50,000 increase over the course of the year. Again, it was a small insight that we learned and we tested that has a significant impact on the business. One way to uncover a finding like this is via unmoderated user studies. These are a research method that allows you to recruit relevant users and set up a series of questions and tasks for them to complete online while being recorded, and then you can observe that behavior afterwards. And here's one that looks like on the Seer site. A few things to keep in mind if you want to run these. Ask pre-study questions to learn about the user's needs and expectations before they even see your site. So you can ask something like, what would you expect to see on a product page for a blender? Then we can see how those needs match up with our actual page. Again, your questions will really depend on what your objective are, but a couple to think about during website reviews could be, does this page speak to why you chose to purchase the product or service? What messaging on this page resonates best with you? Or even what's missing from this page? In terms of tools, there are a variety out there. A couple affordable ones include userinput.io, Usability Hub, as well as Validately. At Seer, we've been using Validately most often and had great experiences with them. So after all of that, my presentation and Rand presentation, you might still be thinking, you know, I've worked at this company for a really long time. I know what our customers want, and I worked in digital for a long time. I know what a good experience looks like. Let's talk about the false consensus effect. So say you're at a grocery store before the pandemic and someone in a business suit approaches you and asks you why you choose to shop at the particular store. So you say, it's close to your house, the produce is really fresh, and they have a really good selection of international products. And the person nods and says, thank you. And then she tells you she works for the grocery store's corporate office, and they're there today to get footage for commercials, and your interaction was filmed. Then she asks if you'll sign a release so they can use your interview. Would you sign the release or not? At this point, I think Erin should be putting together a poll. Yes, so feel free to answer, and we'll share the results in a little bit. Would you feel comfortable sharing a release or not? And then we'll go into the data. And I believe once it's finished, it'll be shared to everyone. Yes, so no, 60% of people said no, 40% said yes. Okay, so let's go back to the study. When people were asked if they'd sign the video release in the study, 66% of people said they would sign. So I think we have a more timid bunch than the study originally went through, and 34% of people would not sign. So what? Who cares? This is where it gets interesting. So then they asked those same people, how would you predict others would respond? Would they also sign with you, or would they not sign? For people who said they would sign, they predicted on average 76% of people would also sign and agree with them. Of the people who said absolutely not, my face is not being used in a commercial, They predicted on average 57% of people would also not sign and agree with them. That's the really interesting part. Even the minority group of people who would not sign in this study thought that the majority would agree with them. And that is the false consensus effect. We think people are going to agree with us, and more than often they're not going to. It's just a bias. And that's something we need to keep in mind. So the next time you are reviewing the design of a page or you're reviewing ad copy and you think it looks great, you think it's awesome, remember that you are not your audience. What you like and believe is not going to be the same as what they like and believe. You have to do research to understand what they care about and what they're interested in and give that to them, not what you think. And if you take away anything from this presentation, just remember not to be like this guy. You don't want to only speak about what you're proud of or what features you think are best. You really have to understand your audience and get to understand what connects with them to be able to market to them better. And as we've shown, you can have really strong results if you do that. All right, Erin, I think it's time for take you away for Q&A.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for the great presentations. We can dive right into Q&A. So the first one we got, Rand, is for you. You mentioned sort of that giving free value for an email address. You showed more of that tool usage for sort of like a gated content play. How do you feel about gated content or research specifically outside of the tool, or other plays of like what type of value do you see provided that often gives a successful response to generate that future pent-up demand?
Yeah. Great question. So the reason I like tools so much, or interactive content even, I like them a lot because you can basically capture that email address in the workflow process. We tried this a few different ways with SparkToro actually, and what we found to be most effective is basically if you go to SparkToro's homepage, for those of you who haven't signed up yet, and you run a search, you basically are then asked for your email before you get the result. Sorry, is that right? No, you get the first result. And then if you try and run more searches, you will then be gated into validating your email, et cetera, right? And so that methodology, and it might work differently for different interactive content, different tools, right? But you can test a lot of that and get very good results from sort of a CRO type of landing page test process. So I love that kind of email capture. That being said, content can work well. I have found the frustrating part with gated content is it's very tough to get it to rank well. That is because the content itself is sort of hidden. I've seen a little bit more effectiveness with with a few things. So I've done it really effectively with surveys. Essentially, run a survey of an audience to get some interesting information that group of people wants, right? So let's say it's, for example, I ran a study of how did you get into marketing? How did you learn marketing? And my goal was not actually email capture, but my goal was to help a group of students who wanted to become marketers understand how folks like us got into the field, what worked well for us, how we learned our skills, how we got our jobs, what we were, where we were working, all those kinds of things. If you want to break into marketing, how do you do it? And that survey was extremely effective because what I basically did is I asked the questions, and then at the end I said, do you want to get an email when the survey results go live? Boom. That was 790 emails out of 1,100 survey takers. It's awesome, right? And that's from a couple of tweets and some LinkedIn posts. It was very, very effective way to gather emails. I have also seen content do well when there's a really good teaser. So a lot of gated content, there'll be a form field, a very brief description of what you're going to get, and then you have to fill it all in. The conversion rates on that suck. In B2B, they're really terrible. If, however, you give sort of here's the first 3 or 4 pages of the report, and then you want to see the rest of it, right? You've created you've built a little bit of a relationship. There's a little bit of trust there. You know what you're going to get. You got a sample. Much more effective. It's really similar actually to the tool method, right? Where you like show a little bit of value before you ask for the confirmation of the email. Yeah. Give, ask. Well said, Lauren. You're on it.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And it's almost, I almost think of it as like a half gate on content, right? Because it's like, well, we're going to give you a little bit of value. And if you like that, because we've sort of had a problem with that at Seer, almost gating content almost feels against our values because of the transparency value that we lean into. So it's a good way to sort of make sure that the time you invest in creating something valuable is also creating value for yourself. Cool.
Especially with
we had a question come in.
Content thing, yeah. Erin, if you can have like 1 or 2 visuals from the content that are open so that people can share and amplify more easily, like one graph from the survey, one illustration, whatever it is, like that really helps. Sorry, go ahead.
Gotcha, yeah. And I know your marketing survey one works because that's how you got my email. I signed up for those results. All right, another question that came in the chat. Any specific strategies on listening to your audience you'd recommend work well in early stage companies? Maybe they're not as effective in later stages, but where would you sort of start for those early stage company audience research? Open to either of you.
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind, it's still effective in later stage, is going to be customer interviews. It reminds me of something that April Dunford had talked about in her book about positioning, is that if you're just starting off, you really want to understand the customers that you have in these early stages, because those are the people that converted with you and those are the people whose needs you're solving. You might have this ideal customer, but if they're over here and you're solving their needs, it'd be really great to have some interviews with them to see why did they decide to go with you? What triggered the need for your type of product or service? Those are still really effective, as Rand said, throughout pretty much any part of the process, but that was the first thing that came to mind for me in terms of early stage.
Yeah, let's see, I almost want to show you, but so you can, if you go and Google SparkToro funding, you'll see like a blog post that we wrote all about our funding structure. And in that blog post, I linked to the slide deck. It's not even a slide deck. It's just a Google Doc that we use to raise the money for SparkToro. And what's in there is a bunch of our early stage customer research, like what we did to validate the idea of building this product. And that was essentially, it started with a large scale survey. And I do actually recommend the survey. The reason I recommend the survey before the interviews instead of the other way around is when you do the large scale survey, you can see sort of how many people have a problem and who those people are who have that problem. Oh, thank you for sharing it in the link there. And then you can take that group of people, like for example, for us, we saw, oh, it's a lot of people who say they are in digital PR who have this problem, in creative agencies, more so than like SEO agencies, in content marketing and content agencies, and in whatchamacallit, paid social advertising. And so those were the people that I said, okay, when I'm on the road, right, I'm flying to Raleigh, I'm going to speak at Digital Summit or whatever, I'm going to go and have interviews. I'm going to ask this agency, hey, can I drop by your offices and tell you about SparkToro and ask you and do exactly what Teresa, what you just said, like have that in-person interview conversation. But those numbers drove the people that we decided to have the interview conversations with. And then we took those learnings and turned that into, again, another set of, we think these are the most painful problems that our audience experiences around this issue. Let's go try and solve for those. And let's see if we can validate that at scale. So essentially, we learned from these 24 people we interviewed who matched the profiles from our survey. Now let's go see if another 500 people have that same problem who share those characteristics. And usually that was like a really effective methodology to go back and forth. You can see the survey results. I think I actually published them as well. So you can see how we structured the questions and did that. I will say we also worked with Elevate, which is Claire Sullentrop and Georgiana Laudy. And they helped us during our beta phase essentially validate that we were solving right problems. They have some really good case studies on their website, which is heyelevate.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And we will share that post out in the thank you email. So we are at time, but we'll reach out to folks who had questions that we didn't get to answer. Rand, Teresa, anything you want to leave everybody with? Or Jack, I know you were really barking in the beginning, if you want to say any last words.
Teresa, I just want to say, first off, your presentation was amazing and you're great at this. And second, what you talked about at the end there, where people get into this mindset of, I assume everyone agrees with me and I know my audience. I cannot tell you how many times I have made painful, dumb, harmful decisions because I assumed I knew my audience. It's like, I know I'm not them, but I assume I know them well because I have lots of connections there. And even people I think I know well, I don't know them. Like I have to survey, I have to interview, I have to do my research, I have to get data at scale, I have to have those real relationships. And if I don't, my decision-making is awful.
Yeah, that was the gist of it. No, I think it's just so important. I know it feels like it's another thing that falls to the end of the to-do list, one quarter after another, but it doesn't have to be this huge resource intensive research plan. It's something that can get done quickly and just do some small tweaks. But I know we're at time, so I appreciate everyone sticking in with us and listening in.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care.